emotional I am. I would immediately forgive them and invite them to the wedding with an apology. It seemed ominous that they would make sure I never forgot my wedding. My aunt wanted to talk to me but wasn't sure if she should. Her apology for not telling me earlier was accepted because I wouldn't have known about this if she hadn't told me. After she confessed, I called Jacob to tell him he was right. My mother had lied to get an invitation out of compassion, and then they wanted to spoil my wedding. We were both furious and decided to post on social media since I had learned that they had also been telling people that I was not inviting them because they were farm folk and I believed I was too good for them. After revealing the truth, I blocked my sister because she had plainly been involved in this mess and had chosen a side. I texted her to say I was rescinding her invitation and didn't want her at my wedding. After that, Jacob and I felt better. Despite forgetting to deactivate my grandmother's number, I received a message after posting. It was certainly my mother, and she wrote a text claiming that no matter what I said on social media, she would prevent me from getting married because she would never let this happen without her permission. She stated I would never be happy with Jacob without my family's blessing, and that I could solve things with her. I responded to her because I was irritated. I told her that I wish she had been diagnosed with cancer because then I would have been able to endure her better. I blocked that number too. Unfortunately, she got a screenshot of my message and posted it on her social media pages. Now half of the family believes I went too far and the other half thinks my parents are insane. I feel horrible about that comment, because I don't want to say things like that, but I was pushed too far that day. I wish my mother had lung cancer correctly diagnosed. Edit. Some people wondered why my parents would be upset that I wouldn't return home after graduation if they actually disliked me. Because my parents constantly told me and my sister we'd run the farm when they were elderly. They wanted me to run it alongside them because they wanted it to stay in the family. If my sister took over the farm, her husband would claim it too, which they didn't want. Me being involved would likely prevent it, and we've discussed this. I planned to say no a couple of days after my sister's wedding, but I didn't since I didn't want to quarrel with them while at college and reliant on them for money. Several people think I should have cut them off after I went away for college or after I graduated, but I didn't want to do that while I was in college since I wouldn't have someone to pay for everything, which would be bad. As I had moved far away from them physically and emotionally, I didn't cut them off because it seemed needless. I suppose I should have done it. Update 1. Thanks for taking the time to comment on the post. My family is still barred after 4 days, and I won't apologize. Jacob and I talked about this and realized I was overthinking what my family thought. If some people supported my parents, it was their choice. If they didn't want to attend my wedding to support my parents, I couldn't change their thoughts and didn't want to. After talking, we agreed to release a statement indicating we were done with this debacle. People could attend my wedding, but they didn't have to. In addition, most of my family has known that my dad and grandparents have always been cruel to me and made fun of my appearance, knowing I can't change my medical condition. They always made me feel ugly and little, and they don't respect me because they can't tolerate my not trying to get along with them anymore. It felt nice to say it out loud because I was tired of my family believing they could text me that I had carried things too far and make me apologize to my parents. They never considered what I had been through all these years, and my parents, who were supposed to protect me, made me feel worse about myself. They never supported me as a child and criticized my parents' words. How was my retaliatory cruelty to my mother worse than theirs? I could argue I was provoked, but I was a child when my parents said such nasty things to me. Their justification? After posting all of these ideas with Jacob, no family have told me I went too far. My allies reached out to me to reassure me. I was grateful for their support and others who had stood up for me against my parents. My parents and other family members can hike. They no longer interest me. Update 2. A week before the wedding, my aunt arrived at my place in the morning to tell us my parents and grandparents were here. She told me that my mother still didn't know who gave me their plan, but she believed my aunt, so she thinks I guessed her strategy, which is ridiculous. They informed my aunt that they had arrived last night and were staying at a hotel near my house. They intended to confront me before the wedding ceremony. I don't know how they're going to accomplish that because I'm being married in a hotel that's not even close to my house. And even if they come with me, they won't get a room because it's been booked for years. Security will be crucial. I don't know how they'll do it. Anyway, I thanked my aunt for letting me know, but I thought it odd that she had come all the way to my house to tell me something she could have told me over the phone. I asked her why she had to come, and she seemed uneasy and said my mother put her on the phone with my granny and cornered her last night. They teased her about how my grandma stays in a motel instead of at her daughter's house despite having a daughter here. My aunt told me that she had attempted to avoid it, but they had forced her into having them stay with her instead, and now they were at her house, so she was hesitant to text or phone me to let me know. That's why she visited me and apologized excessively, but she claimed she was finding it tough to go against her mother and sister and wanted to be on the right side. But they were making it hard for her to say no. I thought my aunt was weak to give him so easily, but I told her it was great that they were staying with her instead of in a hotel since I could just go to her house with her and confront them about what they were planned. In a hotel, security and other factors may have complicated it. I convinced my aunt, and Jacob and I are going to her house. Update 3. We just returned from my aunt's house an hour ago after a large fight with my parents and grandmother. I don't feel horrible about it, I'm relieved, because I think I've finally shaken them off, and they won't bother me again. When I arrived at the house with my aunt, my mother looked shocked. Then she realized that my aunt must have told me about their plan earlier. I stopped my grandma and mom from ranting at my aunt about how she had betrayed them, because this was about my relationship with them. I calmly informed her that I had made it clear that I did not want them at my wedding or in the future. If they didn't listen, I could phone the police on my wedding day and tell them I wanted nothing to do with them. My parents were upset because I had no right to threaten them after everything they had done for me. I informed them that anything they did for me was because they decided to have me, not because they were helping me. I told them that they had only ever done the bare minimum and had never been caring or loving to me, which kids need. Talking to them made me cry since they had made me feel bad about myself my whole life and sought to ruin my happiness as an adult. I called them selfish and said I was delighted they came so I could finally say all these things to them in person, and maybe they would understand. I walked out of the house without waiting for a response and got in the car after my meltdown. After driving home silently, Jacob hugged me while I cried to get it out of my system. I feel better about this situation now, and my aunt contacted me to say that after I left, my mother and grandmother turned on her, but she stood up to them and asked them to go. So they packed everything and went within 30 minutes. She doesn't know if they'll stay in a motel or go home, but she's delighted they're out of our hair. Update 4. My wedding last week was unreal. After the last update, I hadn't spoken to my parents or anyone who was still talking to them. I felt extremely disoriented since I had no idea what they were doing, and I was terrified they were preparing to do something on my wedding day because I was sure my sister had told them about the venue and whatnot. Thankfully, my darkest concerns did not come true and I was married smoothly. After I posted several images on social media, my sister contacted me to apologize for messing with my parents and say she realized it was wrong. Since I blocked her phone number, she contacted me on social media. She said she was thrilled for me and congratulated me on the wedding, which I appreciated. We ended it there since I haven't forgiven her, but she apologized. I want to enjoy my new life with Jacob now, but I might forgive her and reconcile later. It will take a long time. I'll never reconcile with my parents, though, because even though they didn't do anything at the wedding, which I'm thankful for, they contacted me a couple of days ago to formally cut me out of their life. I was disowned and will inherit nothing after they die. I don't mind, I never expected them to include me in their will. Perhaps they did. I thought they would leave me nothing useful, because everything good would go to my sister. After reading their email, I deleted it and went on since I don't care. I'll have fun before leaving for my honeymoon in 2 days. My toxic parents bullied me for years, so I didn't invite them to my wedding. My sister begged me to invite them and offered to pay for them, because this was my mom's dying request. I'm 25 and haven't had a decent familial relationship. I was raised on a Missouri farm till college. I lived with my parents, older sister, 30F, and grandma. My sister was the only one I had a relatively normal relationship with. Though we're not close, she didn't pursue me as much as the rest of the family. Born with vitiligo, I think I failed my family by my appearance. The rest of their family is the beauty standard. Each is tall, blonde, and attractive. They called me the ugly duckling of the family and never let me forget it. My family teased me for my significant face discoloration. I was compared to cows and told God made a mistake by making me a human instead of a calf. I got self-conscious about my appearance as a child, so I can picture how it affected me. In addition to school bullying, I was bullied at home. As I became older, I tried to defend myself, but they said they were joking, and I shouldn't be so sensitive. Long-term nasty statements masked as humor hurt me. I'm glad I left for college since I'd finally be on my own, and chose a college farthest from home, so I wouldn't have to come back much, and only for the holidays. College was the happiest time of my life because people were more open-minded, and I decided I would never go back home. I too didn't want to go home because I found my soulmate in college and am getting married to him. First-year pals? Jacob and I started dating late in our second year. Since then, we've been together, which is the nicest thing for me. While my family thought I was the ugliest person on planet, he did the opposite. In my senior year of college, I was going to tell my sister and family about Jacob so I could introduce him to them when I came home for the holidays. But something they said at the wedding made me feel so bad that I decided not to keep in touch with him after college. On the wedding day, One of my uncles was taunting me about how it was my turn next, and that if I had someone in mind, I should tell my parents. He was teasing me, but my grandma said I would never find someone with such face. My folks agreed first and laughed like it was the funniest thing. Even though they'd made similar comments previously, that comment stung me. Everyone got awkward and didn't say anything. Not sure why. However, that occurrence affected me like never before, and I decided they didn't deserve my life. I graduated a few months after my sister's wedding and invited my parents as a formality. We were friendly. I presented them to Jacob as my boyfriend, and they didn't disguise their disbelief that someone as normal as him would be with me. By then, I had told Jacob about my harsh family, so he avoided them too. After the graduation ceremony, I thanked my parents for paying for college and promised to repay them when I could afford it. I also informed them that I would stay and not return to the farm. That annoyed them, but I replied I preferred city life more, and they left after a frigid goodbye. Over the past 2 years, we haven't had proper contact. Since I no longer travel home, they wish me on birthdays and holidays. I wish them back, but I'm satisfied with this arrangement because after how they've treated me my whole life, this is best. Jacob and I moved in together after graduation, and his parents paid our rent until we found secure employment because I wasn't going home. I accepted his proposal several months ago, at the start of the year. It was time since we've been together for decades and current invitations were sent. The invitation went to my sister and her husband, but not my parents or grandma. The reasons are obvious. I don't talk to them often, and they're not the kind of people I want on my special day. I did not think my family would be surprised that they were not invited, but they were, and my mother called me to tell me how unjust and insulting it was. My sister received her wedding invitation a week ago, and 3 days later. My mother called me to say my family was still waiting. She stated she had overlooked the fact that they hadn't been invited to my engagement party, but the wedding was important, and she expected me to be more punctual with the invites. She didn't get the invitations since I didn't want them at my wedding. She then yelled at me about how I was an ungrateful child who had first ignored the chance to inherit the farm and respect the family company that had given me everything I wanted, and now I was acting like I was too good for them, because they were ordinary country folk. That was ludicrous, so I explained that I didn't want them at my wedding due of their lifelong insults about me and my appearance. She tried to pretend they were jokes, and it was selfish of me to take them seriously. However, I informed him that was how it was and I didn't want them. I hung up, blocked her, and my dad for good measure. I was happy since I had wanted to do that for a long time and finally had an excuse to cut ties with them without feeling bad. Within 2 hours, my sister called me to say she would pay for everything from flying our family here to lodging and even having them at the wedding. Her only request was that I invite them and apologize for not wanting them in my life. I was offended that she was supporting them because she generally keeps out of family issues, and I had asked her and her husband. I didn't understand why she was trying to persuade me to invite our family, so I told her she could skip if she felt strongly about it, but they weren't invited. She told me this wasn't about her or how she felt. But my mom had been diagnosed with stage 2 lung cancer a couple of weeks earlier, and it was her last wish to see her daughter get married. Our family hadn't told me or anyone else, because they didn't want me to worry while I was in another state. They kept this a secret because I was in another state and getting married in a few weeks, so they didn't want to ruin the celebration. I guess my family didn't know my sister told me. She was eager for me to invite our family and make peace with them since this was my mother's final request, and she warned me I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't invite them and attempt to heal my connection with her before something occurred. That news altered everything, because I felt like I would always be the bad person if I didn't make apologies with my dying mother. How can you keep a grudge against a cancer patient? It's hard, especially with your mother. I was a wreck after that phone talk with my sister and didn't know what to do, so I called Jacob and told him everything. He said they might be lying for sympathy. After he mentioned it, I evaluated it because I was too emotional to contemplate it before. I didn't know who to talk to because my sister made it plain that only she, my father, and my grandma knew about the diagnosis. So I contacted my aunt, my mother's younger sister, who had helped me settle in when I initially got here. I knew she was nothing like my mom and grandparents. My mother would probably not object if I told her about the condition, since she was close to her sister. She and I have always had a relatively nice connection, so when I told her what my sister said, she stated she was considering bringing it up with me, but was hesitant. Since I called to talk to her about it, she decided she couldn't lie to me and wouldn't cover for my mother. She said my dad and grandparents were unhappy when my sister received an invitation but not them. Then they contacted her to see if she had received an invitation, and when they found out she had, there was no stopping them. My mother had apparently been telling everyone that I had snubbed my parents because I didn't think they were worthy because they were farm folk. That was false again. My mother told my aunt that she wouldn't let this go unanswered and would call me to confront me about it. She also told her that if I still refused to respect their right to attend my wedding, they would tell me that my mother was sick and knowing how.